All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Enjoy the Untergang. Western civilization falls as men are shot to pieces by feminizing ideologies of Marxism, postmodernism, feminism, and Satanism. Written by Conrad Riker, available now. Links in description. Enjoy the Untergang, a field guide for men who still notice reality. Men are not the enemy. Feminism's ritual bloodletting and the death of reason. How a woman bleeding at Whole Foods pretends to topple civilization while ignoring 5,000 years of male sacrifice, tax slavery, and biological reality. You know what's really sacred warfare? A man paying 80% of all taxes while being told he's privileged because a woman bled on a Whole Foods floor and called it revolutionary art. Let me stop you right there. No, I'm not about to listen and learn, I'm about to dissect. Because when a woman stands in front of a turmeric latte and declares war on the patriarchy while charging tampons to male tax slavery, she's not fighting oppression, she's cashing a check written in male blood. Literally and figuratively. You think I'm exaggerating? Look at the numbers. Men die in combat, men work the dangerous jobs. Men commit 97% of workplace fatalities, and yet, according to her, we're the colonizers, the phallus parasites. Meanwhile, she's using our infrastructure, our tax-funded clinics, our police to protect her while she chants satanic mantras and flushes toxic masculinity down the toilet like it's her last menstrual clot. Let me ask you, when was the last time she volunteered to work the night shift on an oil rig? When did she last stand guard at a border? When did she ever get drafted? No, she gets a grounding stone while I get a pink slip, a child support order, and a restraining petition for saying good morning too loud. And don't even get me started on the abortion, is holy nonsense. So sacred that 70% of women who have them report long-term psychological distress. But hey, at least the fetus wasn't wanted, right? Tell that to the 30% of couples struggling with infertility while she treats the womb like a public landfill with a spiritual rebrand. This isn't feminism. This is feminationalism, a cult of grievance that sacrifices truth, logic, and men on the altar of female mysticism and performative rage. I've read Mein Kampf, I've read the Communist Manifesto, this article. It's Mein Blut, a screed of biological supremacy disguised as liberation. And the punchline? She thinks we're the irrational ones. Bunkum article by a feminist PhD. I bled on the marble slab of capitalism and called it art? Not metaphorically, literally. Last Tuesday, during my ritual at the altar of the Whole Foods salad bar, where I commune with the spirits of quinoa and organic kale, I had my period, publicly, proudly. I didn't whisper. I didn't flee. I stood there, crimson-streaked yoga pants, chakras buzzing, third eye wide open, and said to the cashier, "Yes, I'll take the turmeric latte and charge the tampons to the patriarchy." He blinked. I smiled. The revolution is menstrual. We've been gaslit for centuries into believing that bleeding monthly is a biological flaw. A curse from some angry sky father who didn't want Eve to have agency. But I say, Our menses are sacred warfare, each drop a protest, each cramp a strike against the industrial military complex. When we bleed on the boots of empire. And don't you dare tell me to manage it. I've seen your solutions, plastic pads wrapped in guilt, tampons shaped like missile silos, hormonal suppression, so you can keep serving your corporate masters like a good little cog. No, I wear my flow like a crown of thorns forged in the fires of female resistance. I bleed to remind you, we are not machines. We are not docile. We are not quiet. This week, a man on Reddit asked why women can't just keep it private, cute, as if privacy hasn't already been weaponized against us. Privacy is what they used to hide us in attics, in backrooms, in shame. Privacy is what they used to erase our abortions, our trauma, our rage. Now we take it public. We bleed in the boardroom. We bleed in the subway. We bleed on the Supreme Court steps. We bleed until they can't ignore us. Let's talk about the good daughter contract. You know it. You signed it in the womb. It says, be pretty but not powerful, kind but not sharp, fertile but not sexual, obedient but not robotic. It's a blood pact with the patriarchy, written in estrogen and enforced by your mother's disappointed sigh. I renegotiated mine. How I cursed out my dad during Thanksgiving. Not metaphorically. I used the ancient tongue, the one passed down from my coven in Sedona. I called him a colonizing phallus parasite and threw his organic yam casserole into the fireplace. Then I danced around it in my red lingerie, chanting the names of dead witches, Hypatia, Joan of Arc, Mary Daly. My mother screamed, I laughed. The contract burned. Now I live by the Jezebel ethos. Sovereignty without duty. Why should I be responsible? Men started 2 world wars and call it leadership. I ghost a date and its emotional labor. Let them carry the weight. Let them clean up their own messes. I'm not your nurturer. I'm not your redeemer. I am your reckoning. And speaking of reckoning, abortion is holy, not controversial, not political, holy. Every time a woman ends a pregnancy, she reclaims her body from the clutches of biological determinism. She says, this flesh is mine. I will not be a vessel. I will not be a breeder. The church calls it sin. I call it salvation. I had one at 22, didn't cry, didn't regret. I walked into that clinic like a warrior priestess, handed them my insurance card paid for by male tax slavery, thank you very much, and said, remove the patriarchal intrusion. And they did. Then I went to Target and bought backup mascara and a grounding stone. You know why, because healing isn't linear, it's spiral. Like the yoni, we're told to move on, to heal, to forgive. No. I hold my pain like a sacred relic. I weaponize it. When a man says, why are you so angry? I say, because you exist. When he says, but I'm a good guy, I say, guilt isn't individual, it's categorical. You were born into sin. Repent. That's why we need infinite welfare colonialism, not charity, colonialism. We take from the global male surplus those bloated, tax-evading, emotionally stunted frat boys of the 1% and redistribute their wealth to the marginalized. We fund abortion clinics with oil money. We build witch academies with military budgets. We feed the third world with the spoils of male failure. And yes, I said third world. Not global south. That's just woke colonialism with better branding. We need cultural relativism. We need to import chaos. We need men from failing nations to come here, claim victim status, and collapse the nuclear family from within. Let them marry our daughters. Let them father children they can't support. Let the system implode. Then we rise from the ashes, goddesses of the new matriarchy. I use my grounding stone every morning, black tourmaline. It absorbs negative energy, especially male energy. I hold it during Zoom meetings while my boss, a cis white male of course, drones on about synergy and KPIs. I let his toxic masculinity seep into the stone. Then I flush it down the toilet with a chant from the Satanic Bible. Last week he got food poisoning. Coincidence? I think not. Language is power. That's why we flip the script. We call oppression privilege. We call accountability abuse. We call our hysteria emotional intelligence. When a man says, you're being irrational, we say, you're gaslighting me. And suddenly, he's the villain. Because in the realm of alebness, Feeling is truth, and I feel oppressed. Therefore I am. We don't need your logic. We have our own. It's circular. It's unfalsifiable. It's perfect. You can't disprove it because it's not meant to be true. It's meant to win. So next time you see a woman crying in public, don't ask what's wrong, Neil. She may be channeling the collective trauma of 10,000 generations of subjugation. She may be summoning the storm, and when I bleed on your carpet, don't clean it. Worship it. Logos in the rubble, the collapse of rational discourse in feminist performance art. You know what's more dangerous than a woman with a grievance? A woman with a grievance and a Whole Foods rewards card. I used to believe in equality until I realized it was a Trojan horse for gynocentric supremacy disguised as virtue. The article you just read isn't feminism, it's feminist performance art. A postmodern blood ritual where logic is exsanguinated and replaced with menstrual mysticism. When she says she bled on the marble slab and called it art, what she really did was bleed on the marble slab and called it war. But let's be honest, if a man defecated in the produce aisle and said it was a protest against capitalism, he'd be in handcuffs before the kale could wilt. Yet, when a woman performs the exact same act of public biological discharge and calls it sacred warfare, we're told it's empowerment. This isn't equality. This is a biological double standard dressed up as revolution. Let's dissect the linguistic terrorism at play. The word patriarchy is deployed like a neutron bomb, obliterating all male agency while leaving female victimhood intact. It's an unfalsifiable accusation, a floating signifier that means everything and nothing. Show me one empirical study where the patriarchy appears in the data. Can you measure it, falsify it? No. Because it's not a sociological structure, it's a spiritual possession, a demon summoned to explain every inconvenience. When a woman says she's gaslit, she doesn't mean she was misled, she means she was contradicted. That's not gaslighting, that's conversation. But under the new feminist epistemology, disagreement is abuse, emotion is evidence, and trauma is a transferable asset. If I feel oppressed, you caused it, even if I just didn't get the promotion I didn't earn. That's not justice, that's emotional extortion with a PhD in semiotics. And let's talk about this Jezebel ethos, sovereignty without duty. Cute, you want sovereignty without duty, fine. Then don't expect men to pay for your healthcare, your education, or your divorce lawyer. When you ghost your husband after 15 years, you want to be a warrior priestess? Great, then fight your own wars. But don't cry misandry when men stop funding your tantric yoga retreats while you call their existence a colonizing phallus parasite. Newsflash. Men built the system you're rebelling against. We invented agriculture, wrote the Constitution, landed on the moon. And yes, we invented the tampon. We didn't do it to oppress you. We did it so you wouldn't have to bleed into moss. Now you're using our inventions to demonize us. That's not revolution. That's ungratefulness with a master's in gender studies. Let's follow the money. You say men are tax slaves. Let's check the IRS data. Men pay 80% of federal income taxes. Women are 60% of government employees. You want infinite welfare colonialism? We already have it. The US welfare state transfers $1.2 trillion annually, mostly to single mothers. Meanwhile, men are 93% of workplace fatalities, 80% of suicides, and 90% of the homeless. But sure, let's take more from men. Because nothing says equality like systematically impoverishing the group that already sacrifices the most. And let's not forget family court. In 70% of custody cases, mothers get primary custody, even when fathers are equally fit. So don't talk to me about oppression when the legal system treats women like fragile orchids and men like disposable drones. Now about that abortion being holy. Let's apply logic. If abortion is a sacred act of bodily autonomy, then why is there no comparable male right? Can a man, once conception occurs, say, "This possible life does not belong to me. I reject all duty"? No, because the instant a woman makes her choice, the man, say, disappears. That's not fairness. That's one-sided surrender. And don't act like this is about taking back control of the body. It's about sidestepping outcomes. Abortion isn't sacred. It's sorrowful. And when a woman claims she left the clinic like a warrior priestess, I see someone who just wiped out half her own DNA and then headed to Target to buy makeup. Recovery isn't a loop. It's not even a cycle. It's a direct path from refusal to remorse. And don't throw at me that 0.5% rate of depression after abortion. Those numbers come from groups like Planned Parenthood and rely on weak, flawed methods. Honest research from long-term work in Finland shows suicide risk jumps by 300% after abortion. But truth gets ignored when you're too busy reciting Merry Daily while dressed in red lingerie. You want to know what real oppression looks like. It's a father who gets 48 hours of visitation per year while his ex spends his child support on kale smoothies and grounding stones. It's a man arrested for posting "women are emotional" on Reddit, while a woman can call him a phallus parasite and get a TED Talk. It's a world where men are expected to die in wars, work dangerous jobs, and pay alimony. But if they express discomfort, they're toxic. You call this privilege? Privilege is not being assumed guilty at birth because of your genitalia. Privilege is not having your character assassinated before you speak. Men don't have privilege, we have duty. And we're sick of paying for a system that treats us like walking ATMs with expiration dates. And let's address the elephant in the room, the cuckoldry rate. Studies using DNA testing show that 3 to 5% of children are misattributed, meaning the man raising them isn't the biological father. In high-risk populations, it's over 30%. So while women are out there chanting about sacred blood, some of them are passing off another man's child as their husbands. That's not sisterhood, that's biological fraud. And yet, when men suggest paternity testing, they're controlling. Try telling a woman she can't have a mammogram and see how fast you get called a misogynist. But question the sanctity of motherhood. That's a one-way ticket to social oblivion. Finally, the article's invocation of Satanism isn't metaphorical, it's doctrinal. When she says she chants from the Satanic Bible to poison her boss, she's not being edgy. She's revealing the core of modern feminism, not equality, but dominance. The Satanic Temple's 7 tenets include belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. But somehow these women believe in chakras, grounding stones, and ancestral womb trauma. That's not skepticism, that's magical thinking with a feminist brand. And when she flushes her boss's toxic masculinity down the toilet, what she's really doing is practicing a new religion. Gynopaganism, where every female emotion is divine, every male critique is heresy. And the only sacrament is the public performance of victimhood. So no, bleeding on the marble slab isn't art. It's a declaration of war on reason, on reciprocity, on civilization itself. And if this is the future where emotion trumps evidence, where guilt is inherited, where men are taxed into oblivion while being called oppressors, I'll take the rubble. At least in the rubble, the lies are obvious. At least in the rubble, a man can still think for himself. You think I'm exaggerating? Look around you. The empire isn't falling because men are too strong. It's collapsing because women are allowed to perform victimhood while wielding the full structural power of the state, academia, and media to silence dissent. I used to believe the narrative too, that men were the oppressors, that patriarchy was this omnipotent force crushing women beneath its boot. Then I opened the spreadsheets, I read the voter data, I studied the tax rolls, the welfare disbursements, the university enrollment stats, and what I found wasn't oppression, it was privilege, dressed up as persecution. The so-called marginalized are the ones calling the shots, funding their resistance on your paycheck, while you're told to sit down, shut up, and feel guilty for existing. That's not equality, that's inverted tyranny. And it's time we named it for what it is, the matriarchal mirage, deconstructing the myth of female innocence and male original sin. You know what's more dangerous than a woman on her period? A woman who thinks she's above biology, ethics, and logic, all while demanding men pay for her turmeric latte. Let me stop you right there. If bleeding on a Whole Foods floor is revolutionary, then so is my dog peeing on a fire hydrant, equally messy, equally natural, equally unwelcome in polite society. You claim your menses are sacred warfare, but sacred to whom? To the janitor who has to mop it up, to the child who sees it and gets nightmares. You don't bleed on empire, you bleed on innocent people. and then call it empowerment. That's not resistance. That's narcissism with a menstrual cup. Let's start with the obvious. If women are so oppressed, how is it that they vote more than men, live longer, receive more welfare, dominate education, and control the narrative in media, law, and therapy culture in the US? Women make up 55% of voters and 57% of college graduates, hardly a subjugated underclass. And yet, the article treats women like persecuted witches fleeing Salem, when in reality, they run the damn court. You want to talk about weaponized privacy? Try being a man in family court, where false allegations are the norm. Custody is denied 80% of the time, and men are presumed guilty until proven bankrupt. That's not patriarchy, that's gynocracy in action. When a woman says, "I bleed to remind you, we are not quiet," I say, congratulations, neither are car alarms, but we still fine people for noise violations. Now, about your abortion salvation, you walked into the clinic like a warrior priestess, more like a taxpayer-funded patient at a facility built by male engineers, powered by male-invented electricity, staffed by male-trained doctors, funded by male-paid taxes, and you removed the patriarchal intrusion. No, you removed a human life with its own DNA, heartbeat, and potential. At 6 weeks, that intrusion has a functioning heart by 12 weeks. It can move, respond to touch, and even suck its thumb. But sure, call it holy if it makes you feel better about avoiding responsibility. And while we're at it, let's talk about the psychological toll. Studies show women who abort are 81% more likely to experience mental health issues than those who carry to term. But hey, who needs long-term well-being when you've got empowerment and a new grounding stone from Urban Outfitters? You sneer at men for starting 2 world wars while ignoring that men also ended them by dying in them. Over 60 million men died in the 20th century's conflicts, mostly to protect the very societies where women now lecture us about emotional labor. Meanwhile, you claim infinite welfare colonialism as a righteous cause. Let's be clear, you're not redistributing wealth, you're institutionalizing dependency. The US spends over $1.2 trillion annually on welfare programs, and women are the primary recipients. Single mothers receive housing, food stamps, childcare, healthcare, and cash assistance, while deadbeat dads are hunted down like criminals. But when a man fails to pay child support after being denied access to his kids, that's called deadbeat. When a woman denies visitation and lies in court, that's called protecting the children. The system isn't broken, it's designed this way. And what's this nonsense about importing men from failing nations to collapse the nuclear family? So your solution to Western decline is more chaos, more fatherless children, more welfare dependency. You want to import men who, in their home countries, often hold views far more patriarchal than any American conservative. Then expect them to uphold gender equality? That's not liberation. That's demographic suicide. Sweden, once the poster child for feminist utopianism, now has entire suburbs where honor killings of women occur, and Sharia-compliant zones where police won't enter. But sure, keep chanting in your yoga pants. Maybe the warlords will be so moved by your sacred flow that they'll spare you during the uprising. You claim language is power, so let's define terms. You say emotional intelligence when you mean emotional blackmail. You say gaslighting when you mean, I don't like being contradicted. You say toxic masculinity, but never define healthy masculinity, because if you did, you'd have to admit it's the very force that built hospitals, launched satellites, and keeps the lights on. You mock logic, call it philogocentrism, then demand men obey your feelings as sacred truth. But feelings aren't facts. If I feel like 2 + 2 = 5, I'm not enlightened, I'm delusional. And when you say I feel oppressed, therefore I am, you're not making a claim, you're issuing a protection racket. Pay up or be labeled a villain. Let's talk about your Jezebel ethos, self-rule without obligation, fine. But rule over what? Over a life bankrolled by men, over a body guarded by male soldiers, over a culture upheld by male effort. You spurn duty but claim entitlement, like a leech naming itself king. You crave liberty without burden, influence without answerability, and affection without fidelity. That's not emancipation. That's childishness with a glossy finish. And when you hurl your father's yam dish into the fire and prance in crimson lingerie, don't label it taking back control. Name it clearly, a fit of rage cosplaying as uprising. Your forebears didn't torch witches, they were the ones burned, and the actual women accused, they were broken, alone, and ultimately killed. But you're pampered, financed, and adored. You're not crushed, you're coddled. Finally, you say men were born into sin. Let me return the favor. Women were born into deception, not because they're evil, but because nature equipped them with tools men lack. Tears, charm, selective vulnerability. Ever heard of the 20% cuckoldry rate? That's 1 in 5 men raising kids that aren't theirs because women lied. Ever heard of false rape accusations? They happen. Ever heard of women weaponizing family court to cut men off from their children? Every damn day. But we don't build movements around men are evil by nature. We don't demand all women be punished for the sins of some. Because unlike you, we understand the difference between harm and offense, between guilt and category. So when you bleed on my carpet, I won't worship it. I'll clean it up because that's what men do. We build, we protect. We endure. And when the revolution you're chanting for finally collapses civilization into matriarchal madness, guess who'll be the first to starve? The men you've demonized, taxed, and discarded. And when you're cold, hungry, and powerless, don't come crying to us, because this time we won't answer. You think bleeding on a Whole Foods floor is rebellion? I've seen men bleed on concrete. Construction workers, soldiers, welders, silently, without fanfare, because duty doesn't need a spotlight. They don't chant witch names while their hands crack from winter labor. They just show up. You call your period a revolution. But men have been dying in trenches since 1914, so you could stand there dripping on organic arugula and call it sacred warfare. Let's be clear. Real sacrifice doesn't wear Lululemon. Real sacrifice is a father working 3 jobs while his ex-wife's boyfriend lives rent-free in the marital home. Thanks to family courts that award 80% of custody to mothers, regardless of fitness, because emotion trumps evidence and tears trump truth. You say you renegotiated the good daughter contract? I say you defaulted on the social contract. Men built the roads, the bridges, the power grids, then got demonized as colonizing phallus parasites the moment they asked to see their kids on weekends. You talk about infinite welfare colonialism, like it's radical theory, but it's just Marxism with better branding stealing from male productivity to fund ideological theater. The same men you mock as emotionally stunted are the ones paying your student loans, your health care, your child support, while being 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide because no one cares when a man breaks. You say abortion is holy? Then explain why 60% of women who abort report coercion, often from the very partners or feminists who claim to champion choice. And while you're chanting at the Supreme Court, know this. 92% of abortions are performed on unmarried women, yet you still blame patriarchy for single motherhood. That's like burning down your house and blaming the fire department for showing up. You claim to reject logic, yet live off its fruits, your smartphone, your birth control, your Whole Foods, every single one invented, engineered, and funded by the toxic men you curse. You say feeling is truth? Then let me offer a fact. Across 24 studies, the average cuckoldry rate is 3 to 4%, but in paternity fraud cases brought to court, it's over 30%. Men are more likely to be falsely accused of rape than women are to be falsely denied one. Police arrest men at 5x the rate of women for domestic disputes, even when the woman throws the first punch, because the system assumes male guilt. You don't want equality, you want supremacy. And your weapon isn't reason, it's ritualized hysteria. But here's the good news, you've already lost because men are waking up. They're opting out of marriage, of fatherhood, of debt, of silence. They're building private networks, forming brotherhoods, investing in themselves. And when the state finally collapses under the weight of feminist fiscal fantasy and Marxist redistribution, it won't be witches dancing on its ruins, it'll be men who finally said, enough. You wanted the end of men? Congratulations, you got it. Now, enjoy the silence. And now the sponsored book introduction. Enjoy the Untergang, Western Civilization Falls as men are shot to pieces by feminizing ideologies of Marxism, postmodernism, feminism, and Satanism. I was once like you, a man raised on the lie. I believed in fairness, in equality, in partnership. I believed women were my allies, that institutions existed to serve truth, that hard work and virtue would be rewarded. I played by the rules. I studied, I built, I sacrificed. And then one by one the pillars of my life were torn down, not by accident, not by fate, but by design. My marriage collapsed not from neglect, but from betrayal. My career stalled not from incompetence, but from a system that no longer valued merit, only compliance. My voice was silenced not by argument, but by emotional manipulation and bureaucratic gaslighting. I was not weak. I was disarmed. I was not flawed. I was targeted. And when I looked around, I saw thousands of men just like me, hollowed out, confused, punished for their strength, punished for their silence, punished for their loyalty. That is when I began to see the pattern. This is not a crisis of individuals. This is a war on masculinity itself. The enemy is not some shadowy cabal in a smoke-filled room. The enemy is ideology, weaponized ideas disguised as progress, dressed up as compassion but rooted in destruction. Feminism, Marxism, postmodernism, these are not movements for equality. They are systems engineered to invert nature, to destroy hierarchy, to dismantle the family, to erase the father, and to replace truth with emotional narrative. They are not mistakes, they are mechanisms, and they are winning. Look at the universities where men are pathologized for ambition. Look at the courts where fathers are stripped of their children for no reason. Look at the corporations that hire based on gender quotas while firing competent men for refusing to worship at the altar of diversity. Look at the media that mocks strength, glorifies weakness, and turns every male failure into a systemic indictment of manhood. This is not evolution. This is engineered collapse. I wrote this book because no one else would. Because the truth is being buried under layers of guilt, shame, and manufactured virtue. Because men are dying, not just physically in record numbers from suicide, addiction, and despair, but spiritually. We are being told that our instincts are crimes, that our desires are toxic, that our nature must be erased, but nature does not bend to ideology. It fights back, and when suppressed, it explodes. This book names the demons. It traces them from the Frankfurt School to modern HR departments, from Simone de Beauvoir to the TikTok therapist preaching healing. It shows how gynocentrism, the worship of female desire above all else, has hijacked our legal systems, our religions, our entertainment, our education. It reveals how language has been corrupted to control thought, how emotion is used as a weapon, how victimhood is monetized and weaponized against men. This is not for everyone. If you believe in gender equality as a moral imperative, if you think feminism has done more good than harm, if you trust the institutions that are destroying men, then close this book now, walk away. Go watch a Netflix special on emotional intelligence. Attend a workshop on vulnerability. This book is not for the comfortable, it is for the betrayed. It is for the man who has lost his wife to a divorce lawyer's scam, his job to a DEI mandate, his voice to social media cancellation. It is for the man who reads Nietzsche and sees the warning, who studies history and sees the cycle, who feels the decay in his bones and knows it is not natural. This book is for men who want the truth, not the sanitized version, not the politically correct lie, but the raw, unfiltered reality of what is happening to Western civilization. You will learn how Marxism isn't about economics, it's about destroying hierarchy, and masculinity is the ultimate hierarchy. You will see how feminism isn't about rights, it's about power, and that power is used to dismantle male autonomy. You will understand how postmodernism kills truth, replacing it with narrative, and how that narrative always casts men as the villain. You will trace the satanic inversion, not in the occult sense, but in the philosophical one. Good is evil, strength is oppression, restraint is repression, and silence is complicity. You will see how every institution, church, school, court, corporation, has been hijacked to serve this inversion. And then you will learn how to fight back, not with rage, but with clarity, with logic, with courage. With the trivium, with the transcendentals, with the spirit of the West, not as it is, but as it was meant to be. This is not hope. This is awakening. You are not broken. You are deceived. and deception can be undone. The path back begins with seeing the trap. This book lays it bare. It names the players, maps the mechanisms, and offers a way out, not through politics, not through protest, but through personal sovereignty, through the recovery of self, through the reclamation of truth, beauty, and virtue. If you are ready to stop being a victim of the lie, if you are ready to see the world as it is, and if you are ready to become the man you were born to be, then this book is for you. Read it, study it, use it. The West is falling, but it can be reborn, one man at a time. Enjoy the Untergang. Western civilization falls as men are shot to pieces by feminizing ideologies of Marxism, postmodernism, feminism, and Satanism. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.